Hello students, welcome to Ayurveda. In the continuation of the series of Extra Hepatic Biliary Apparatus, today we are going to learn about cystic duct and bile duct. In the previous lectures, we have discussed about right and left hepatic ducts, common hepatic duct and gallbladder, all the features of gallbladder. So in today's lecture, let's learn cystic duct and bile duct. First, we'll see what is cystic duct. So cystic duct here is 3 to 4 centimeter long. So we have already discussed what is gallbladder. What is gallbladder? What are the three features of gallbladder, including fundus, body and neck of gallbladder. So we have discussed that the neck of gallbladder continues with the cystic duct. Okay, and this cystic duct is 3 to 4 centimeter long. This cystic duct is 3 to 4 centimeter long. It begins at the neck of the gallbladder and runs downward, backward and to the left. So this cystic duct is 3 to 4 centimeter long and it begins at the neck of the gallbladder, exactly at here. This is the end of the neck, and at the end of the neck of gallbladder cystic duct begins, and it runs downward, backward and to the left, and it ends by joining the common hepatic duct at an acute angle to form common bile duct. So we have already discussed in the previous lecture that the cystic duct joins by an acute angle to the common hepatic duct, and they both fuses to form common bile duct. So this is the common bile duct. The cystic duct is joining at an acute angle with the common hepatic duct, and they both fuses to form common bile duct. Okay. The mucous membrane forms a series of 5 to 12 concentric folds which is arranged spirally to form the spiral valve of Heister. Okay, so what are this spiral valve of Heister? We have already discussed in the previous lecture while we were reading about the neck of the gallbladder. Let me erase this. Okay, so while we were reading about the neck of gallbladder, we have discussed that the neck contains the spiral folds of mucus, which are like this, the spiral folds of mucus, which are used to prevent the backflow of the bile. Okay, so just like that folds, that mucus fold, such folds are also present in the cystic duct, and they are called as spiral valve of Heister. They are called as spiral valve of Heister. They are 5 to 12 concentric folds which are arranged spirally and called as spiral valve of Heister. And here by valve it does not mean the actual valve, because they do not have the valvular functions, the typical valvular functions, because this valve does not contract or relapse, as they are not flap like structures. They are not actually the flap like structures. So that's why they do not contract or relax as the normal valve. What this spiral valve of Heister does, it regulates the inflow and outflow of the bile. What it does, it regulates the inflow and outflow and inflow of the bile, and also it prevents the backflow of the bile. And there is also difficulty in cannulation during ERCP. What is ERCP? We'll be discussing further. ERCP is endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography. It is an kind of imagining technique which are used here. So because of this spiral valve of Heister, there is difficulty in the cannulation during that process, and also during contrast studies, these strictures or this spiral valve appears like strictures or stones, and during surgery also there is a challenge identification of this cystic duct, okay, or spiral valve of Heister. So cystic duct is 3 to 4 centimeter long. It begins at the neck of gallbladder, runs downward, backward and to the left, and it ends by joining the common hepatic duct and they both fuses together to form common bile duct. Okay, and the mucous membrane of the cystic duct consists of the spiral folds, which are called as spiral valve of Heister, which regulates the inflow and outflow of bile. And also there are so many complications due to this also, because there is difficulty in cannulation during the imagining techniques, and also during surgery there is difficulty in identification. Okay, moving on. The next one is the bile duct. So bile duct is formed by the union of cystic and common hepatic duct near the porta hepatis. As we have already discussed, near the porta hepatis, this, as you can appreciate here in the picture, the cystic duct and the common bile duct near the porta hepatis joins together to form the bile duct. Okay, this bile duct is 8 centimeter long and 6 in diameter. This bile duct is 8 centimeter long, and if we see the course of this bile duct, it is divided into 4 parts. What are these four parts? The first is supraduodenal part, second is retroduodenal part, third is infraduodenal part, and fourth is intraduodenal part. So by the names we can understand that supraduodenal part means the part which is present above the duodenum. By retroduodenal part we can understand that it is the part which is behind the duodenum, that's why it is called as retroduodenal part. Then intraduodenal or infraduodenal means below the duodenum, and fourth is intraduodenal, that means inside the duodenum. Okay, so let's discuss it in a detail. The first one is supraduodenal part, that means that part which is present above the duodenum. So what, this part runs downward and backward in the free margin of the lesser omentum. Okay, so we can see here the part which is visible here above the duodenum. This is the part which is called as supraduodenal part, and this part runs downward and backward. It goes back to the duodenum in the free margin of the lesser omentum. Then this part become the retroduodenum when it goes back to the duodenum. When it goes back at the back side of the duodenum, this part is called as retroduodenal part. So this part is the retroduodenal part which is present behind the duodenum, behind the first part of the duodenum. Being specific, it is present behind the first part of the duodenum. Then there comes infraduodenal part. So this bile duct continues as the infraduodenal part, which is present, which is lies behind or embedded in the head of the pancreas. Infra means below the duodenum, and here it is present below the duodenum and behind the head of the pancreas, the part which is present behind the head of the pancreas and below the duodenum. So this is the infraduodenal part which is embedded in the head of the pancreas. Okay, and the fourth one is intraduodenal part. So intra means inside the duodenum. So the part which is present inside the duodenum, this part is called as intraduodenal part, which enters the wall of the duodenum. So near middle of the left side of the second part of the duodenum, it comes in contact with the pancreatic duct and accompanies it through the wall of duodenum. So what are the passage of this part? So near the middle of the left side of the second part of duodenum. So this is the second part of the duodenum. So on the left side near the middle, this part joins with the pancreatic duct. The duct we are seeing here or appreciating here in this picture, this is the pancreatic duct, and this infraduodenal part joins with the pancreatic duct, and they both fuses to enter or accompanies each other to enter the wall of the duodenum through and opens into the major duodenal papilla. Okay, So all this is happening inside the wall of the duodenum. What the bile duct accompanies the pancreatic duct and enters into the wall of the duodenum. So these are the four parts of the duodenum that we have discussed. First is the supraduodenal part, this part which is present above the duodenum. Second is retroduodenal part, which is present behind the duodenum. Third is infraduodenal part, which is present below the duodenum and behind the head of the pancreas. And fourth is this part which is called as intraduodenum, which enters the wall of the duodenum along with the pancreatic duct. Pancreatic duct. Moving on, now let's see the relations of each part of this. The first is supraduodenal part. So supraduodenal part is anteriorly related with the liver, as you can appreciate here in this picture. This is the supraduodenal part which is anteriorly related with the liver. You can see the margins of liver here. So this part is anteriorly related with liver, and it is posteriorly related with portal vein and epiploic foramen. Okay. So what is epiploic foramen? It is the natural opening that connects the greater sac with the lesser sac. Okay. Only thing you have to keep in mind that it is a natural opening which connects the greater sac with the lesser sac, and supraduodenal part is posteriorly related with the portal vein and this epiploic foramen. Okay. You can appreciate here in this picture. This is the supraduodenal part, and behind this you can appreciate here is the portal vein. Okay. So posteriorly supraduodenal part is related with portal vein and also epiploic foramen, and to the left it is related with the hepatic artery. Okay. Let me erase this so you can understand it better. So to the left you can see here presents a artery which is on the left side of the supraduodenal part of bile duct, which is hepatic artery. So supraduodenal part is related anteriorly with the liver here, posteriorly with the portal vein, and to the left it is related with the hepatic artery. Okay. Then the retroduodenal part. So relations of retroduodenal part are anteriorly this part is related with the first part of the duodenum. As you can see here, this is the retroduodenal part, you can appreciate. So anteriorly, obviously because this part is present behind the peritoneum, so it is obvious that anteriorly there is presence of duodenum there. So anteriorly it is related with the first part of duodenum, and posteriorly it is related with inferior vena cava. Okay, we have seen supraduodenal part. Supraduodenal part is related posteriorly with the portal vein. Yeah, supraduodenal part is related posteriorly with the portal vein, and infraduodenal part, this part is related posteriorly with inferior vena cava. Okay, and portal vein is present, inferior vena cava is present behind portal vein. This thing you have to keep in mind, that portal vein is present in front and inferior vena cava is present behind, and the supraduodenal part is related with the portal vein, and retroduodenal part is related with the inferior vena cava. And to the left the presence of gastroduodenal artery. Okay, that you can appreciate here in the picture. So this is the gastroduodenal artery which is present just left to the retroduodenal part of bile duct. Okay, so in supraduodenal part we have seen on the left there is presence of hepatic artery, and in retroduodenal part to the left there is presence of the gastroduodenal artery. Okay, so I hope this point is clear in your mind. What are the relations of supraduodenal and retroduodenal part of bile duct? Moving on, now let's see the relations of infraduodenal part. So infraduodenal part means that which is present below the duodenum or behind the head of the pancreas. So anteriorly this part is present in the groove in the upper and lateral part of the posterior surface of head of pancreas. So in the head of pancreas, this is the head of pancreas. So in the head of pancreas, on the upper or lateral part of the posterior surface, here upper and lateral part of the posterior surface, there presents a groove. There present a groove, and this infraduodenal part enters that groove and then comes below the duodenum. So that's why anteriorly it is related with that groove on the posterior part of the or posterior surface of the head of pancreas, and posteriorly it is related with inferior vena cava, just like the retroduodenal part. The infraduodenal part is also related posteriorly with the portal, inferior vena cava. Okay, and anteriorly it is related with the groove on the posterior surface of the head of pancreas. The next one is the intraduodenal part. So what is intraduodenal part? Intraduodenal part is oblique through the duodenal wall. So we have already discussed what exactly are the passage of intraduodenal part and how it connects with the pancreatic duct and enters into the duodenal wall. So while entering into the duodenal wall, its passage is oblique. It enters obliquely into the duodenal wall, as you can appreciate in this picture. It enters obliquely, and within the wall the two ducts, that is infraduodenal bile duct and pancreatic duct, these two ducts unite to form the hepatopancreatic ampulla, or which is also called as ampulla of Vater. So here within the wall of the duodenum, the two ducts, which are the bile duct coming from here and pancreatic duct coming from here, these two ducts unite inside the wall of the duodenum to form the ampulla of Vater, or which is also called as hepatopancreatic ampulla. And the distal constricted end of this ampulla opens at the summit of major duodenal papilla. Okay, so the distal part of this ampulla, it opens into the summit of the major duodenal papilla of second part of duodenum, and this major duodenal papilla is 8 to 10 centimeter to the pylorus. So this is the pylorus of the stomach. Suppose this is the pylorus of the stomach. So from this pylorus, this major duodenal papilla is 8 to 10 centimeter. Okay, so why this measurement is important? This measurement is important during the imagining processes, or we can say during ERCP it is very important. ERCP means endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreaticography. What is ERCP? We will discuss it in the further lectures. So from the pylorus, the major duodenal papilla length is 8 to 10 centimeter. Okay, this is the important point you have to keep in mind. So we have seen relations of infraduodenal part and also intraduodenal part. Moving on. Now the sphincter of bile and pancreatic duct. This is also important point. So there are total 4 sphincters in the bile as well as pancreatic duct. So first one is the sphincter choledochus. Sphincter choledochus are divided into two. superior sphincter choledochus or inferior sphincter choledochus, or it is also called as sphincter voidin. Okay, so sphincter choledochus we count it as two because there are presence of two sphincters, superior sphincter and inferior sphincter. Then the third sphincter is sphincter pancreaticus, and the fourth is sphincter ampullae or sphincter of Oddi. So what exactly are these sphincters and what are their functions? Let's discuss it. So first one is the sphincter choledochus. You can appreciate here in this picture. This is the sphincter choledochus. So it is present at the terminal part of the bile duct. Okay, this is the bile duct, and the sphincter which is present at the terminal part is called as sphincter choledochus. It is divided into two parts, superior and inferior, and this sphincter is always present. Okay, this sphincter is always present, and this sphincter is formed by the smooth muscle rings, and what it does, it normally keeps the lower end of the bile duct closed. Okay, and it opens only when there is a need for digestion, when there is a need for bile secretions or bile to digest the food. So only then the sphincter choledochus opens, otherwise it remains closed. Okay, so this is the most important function of sphincter choledochus, and this sphincter is always present in a human being. The third sphincter is sphincter pancreaticus. So we can appreciate here, this sphincter is sphincter pancreaticus in the pancreatic duct. So in the pancreatic duct, the sphincter present is sphincter pancreaticus. That's why the name. So sphincter pancreaticus is very less developed, and it is not always present in human being. And what this sphincter does, it regulates the flow of pancreatic enzyme during the process of digestion. I'll tell you why this sphincter is not always present in the human being. But first discuss what is sphincter ampullae or sphincter of Oddi. Okay, so the fourth sphincter is the sphincter of Oddi, which we can appreciate here. This is the sphincter of Oddi. Okay, what it does, it surrounds the ampulla of Vetter. We have already discussed what is ampulla of Vetter. So it surrounds the ampulla of Vetter, and it regulates the flow of bile into the duodenum and prevent the backflow. This sphincter is very important in regulating the flow of bile into the duodenum during the process of digestion, and it also prevent the backflow of the bile. It prevent the backflow of the bile. So why sphincter pancreaticus is not always present in human being? Because sometimes there is anatomical variation, and also because of the dominant function of this sphincter of Oddi. So the main function performed by sphincter pancreaticus is that it regulates the pancreatic enzymes, but there is a dominant function of this sphincter of Oddi because it performs dominantly its functions of regulating the flow of bile into the duodenum and preventing the backflow. So there is no such need of sphincter pancreaticus. So that's why it is not always present, and also there is a reason of anatomical variation in some people. So these are the four sphincters of bile duct and pancreatic duct. The first one is the sphincter choledochus or sphincter voidin, sphincter choledochus and sphincter voidin, which are divided into two, superior or inferior. And what this sphincter does, this is always present, and it normally keeps the lower end of the bile duct closed and opens only when there is a need of bile during the process of digestion. The second one is the sphincter pancreaticus, which is less developed, not always present, and they regulate the flow of pancreatic enzyme. And the fourth one is the sphincter ampullae or sphincter of Oddi, which is present or surrounds the ampulla of Vetter, and it regulates dominantly the flow of bile into the duodenum, and it prevents the backflow. Okay. Now let's see histology of common bile duct. First, the mucosa of common bile duct is lined by simple columnar epithelium with apical microvilli. So here also, just like gallbladder, uh, on the apex of the cells, columnar cells, there presents a microvilli which are like brush like borders, and they are supported by lamina propria of dense irregular connective tissues which may contain mucus secreting gland. Okay, so in the previous lecture we have discussed the histology of gallbladder, and there we have discussed that gallbladder lacks the mucus secreting gland. The mucus secreting gland are not present in the gallbladder, but they are present in the common bile duct. Okay, why they are present in the common bile duct? Because there is a continuous flow of bile through the common bile duct. So to protect it from the bile acid as it flows continuous through it, and also to lubricate the inner surface of the common bile duct, the mucus secreting glands are needed here. So that's why they are present in the common bile duct. Mucosal layer. So mucosal layer in intrahepatic ducts, smooth muscle is sparse or absent. Why? So in intrahepatic duct, the smooth muscles are sparse, means very rare, or otherwise it is absent. They are not present in the intrahepatic duct. But in extrahepatic duct, a thin layer of longitudinal and circular smooth muscle fiber is present. Why so? Let's understand. Because the smooth muscles in intrahepatic does not require, the smooth muscle fibers in intrahepatic duct is not necessary or does not require, because there is a passive flow of bile and there is no need of regulation. But in extrahepatic duct, to control the flow of the bile, or uh, to perform the peristalsis movement of the bile duct, there is a need of this smooth muscle fiber. So that's why in intrahepatic duct, as there is the passive flow of bile, or there is no need of regulation, the smooth muscle fibers are not present there. But in extrahepatic duct, the smooth muscle fiber are present, because there needs the control or there needs to regulate the flow of bile. So to control the flow and also to does the peristalsis, the smooth muscle fibers are present in the extrahepatic duct. Okay, and the adventitia here is composed of loose connective tissue with blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerve. Okay, so that's all for today's lecture. We'll discuss the remaining part in the next lecture. Until then, keep reading and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for watching this video.